But we, of course, begin today with our top story, and that is naturally the election day aftermath as results continue to roll in. Let's dive into some of the races in ballot measures. Yahoo Finance senior columnist Rick Newman is here, and so is Yahoo Finance contributor Kevin Cirilli. Rick, let me start with you. Your top takeaway here as results continue to trickle in.
It's not a red wave, so the phrases I've been seeing this morning, red trickle, red puddle, maybe something less like that. So it looks as if Republicans will take control of the House, as just about every forecaster expected, but with a much smaller majority and a smaller majority and less political momentum than the Republicans thought they would have in almost all forecasters.
That's why the futures are probably ticking lower.
So we probably are going to have divided government, but it's not 100% called yet that the Republicans are going to take control of the House. And that in itself is a surprise. In the Senate, as a lot of people thought, we are going to have to wait a few days for this could go down to a runoff race in Georgia, which would happen in December. We may not know until then.
Georgia runoff, but in Pennsylvania, things are a little bit more certain right now. You're coming up from Pennsylvania to join us here on set, Kevin. So what took place in the state?
Well, look, I mean, for John Fetterman, huge win for progressive Democrats. You contrast that in a state like Ohio, where Tim Ryan ran a more moderate campaign. He was defeated by MAGA-backed J.D. Vance. But is it really a long-term play, or was it just a referendum in Pennsylvania on Trump, specifically on his anointed pick, Dr. Oz? You know, when you've got John Fetterman, who has come out against fracking, for example, in a state where that is so crucial to the economy, you know, who knows? You also had a strong night for moderate Democrats. Look no further than, of course, Virginia 7, where Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger was reelected, or even in PA 6, where Chrissy Houlihan was reelected, suburban part of Philadelphia. You know, you mentioned, Rick, about what specifically happens for Republicans. This was a good night for Kevin McCarthy. Likely he's going to be the House Speaker. But if you play this out for what financial markets are going to be watching for, the House Financial Services Committee, Patrick McHenry is under pressure, the Republican likely to lead the HFSC committee, to take a populist approach, to target the C-suite, to say, how are you going to have woke level rhetoric while also trying to be an advocate for free markets? So I expect a new type of conservative approach for the House Financial Services Committee. Meanwhile, if, you know, as you mentioned, we don't know what's going to happen in the upper chamber, but it's going to be a razor thin majority either way. And markets typically like gridlock. The debt ceiling is going to be the first test for all of this.
Well, Rick, a good note from my friend over at Stifel, Brian Garner, runs point on policy there. He's saying investors might disapprove of the chaos that could descend on the capital. I mean, do you see chaos here?
That's the debt limit. He's talking about the debt limit. And there's going to be a big push in the lame duck session to raise the borrowing limit enough to get it all the way through 2024. I think there's a good chance that could happen. That's a bit of a puzzle. Republicans sort of love this tactic, but it's not a winning tactic for them. I just want to point out one other thing that I think is important here. So I've read, a dozen election analyses so far. In the one recurring theme, very bad night for Donald Trump. A lot of his candidates turned out to be too extreme to win general elections. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis had a blowout victory, a re-election victory as Florida governor, and I think we are seeing the decline of Trump. And I think one thing this is really important is more Republicans may become comfortable publicly saying we need to move past Trump.
And a good night for President Biden, because when speaking to folks when I was coming up from Washington, D.C., they were kind of saying that perhaps President Biden would try to hide, so to speak, if there would have been some type of massive blowout for Democrats. That was not the case. Now we're hearing that he might even give a press conference later this week. Who would have thought?
Wow. Kevin Cirilli and Rick Newman, thanks so much for joining us, breaking down all of the action. Then we've still got a little bit that is yet to come, so we'll update our viewers on that throughout the show.